Hello and welcome to my second video. Today I'm going to talk all about how to regulate your emotions better. So this is what works for me, and I'm actually just going to share a very, in my opinion, simple way after you truly learn how to do this, and it's the way that I use. It's really helped me, and I think today I want to make it as simple as possible because that's how I've learned. I think there's so much content online to do with emotions and going into the nervous system and all these sorts of things. Today I just want to bring you a really simple but effective approach that is very meaningful, because I think that there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot that you could learn from or techniques that you could use, but I've found that a lot of the techniques are great if it's just little hiccups in the day, but sometimes you experience something that's very unexpected, and perhaps you're out in public or you're with your family or you're at work and you can't necessarily just go back to your room. You need to be there and face the emotions head on. So that is what I really want to talk about today. I really want to start off by speaking about how I got onto learning about regulating your emotions. And this is not a topic that I'm going to share facts on and this statistic. This is genuinely what I have done in my life. As an introvert, I do need a lot of solitude. When I'm in a social situation, it doesn't energize me, it does the opposite. And it's not that I don't enjoy being in social situations, but it means that I have to be more mindful to what I say yes to, and ensuring within my week I have enough time to recharge my batteries. And really, just for me, the way that I do that is spending complete one-on-one time with God, with no distractions, nobody around me, just me and God. And that's what's really helped me to regulate my emotions. But as I mentioned in my previous video, I've not always had a relationship with God like that. So I really want to share this video, and hopefully anybody can gain something from this technique. So I want to share a story. This is how I was actually reflecting on this the other evening, and that's what really sprung this video idea up, because I realized that I have a technique as to how to deal with unexpected emotions, which are probably more negative, and I realized that I could have done with using this a few years ago. So the story is, I went down to London with my family, and I was so excited to go. And I've always known about my limited social energy, and I call it social battery. I've always known that I've had a limit to that. It's always been the way for me. But I think I must have been working a lot the days up to it and hadn't really had like a break, and I was probably so excited, had all this adrenaline rush, and we got to London. I was so excited. The first day we did a lot, and I don't remember how long we went for, if we went for like 2 nights. And I remember on this meal, and if my dad and my stepmom are watching this, then they will know exactly what I'm talking about. But on this meal, I was just exhausted. And I felt so drained, not from anybody around me, but because I had put so much energy into this weekend. I hadn't given myself a bit of rest. I could have just had like an hour by myself and I would have felt more charged up. But because I constantly was go, I didn't acknowledge the fact that that's not how God has made me. And in that moment, my family will remember that I just felt so exhausted, and I just didn't want to feel like that ever again. And it's nobody else's fault, it's my own fault. And I realized that I've never felt anything like that ever again. There have been moments where perhaps I have felt a little bit like that, but then I immediately understand why. It's because I haven't given myself enough solitude. But the reason for this video is actually not that the solution is to give yourself solitude, as much as in my week I always factor in enough solitude. And if that means arranging a plan for the following week with somebody else, then I will do that. But I am talking about when you are out in the day, when you're at work, when you're doing your food shop, and for example, you're super hungry, you can't wait to go home, you're feeling tired, you're feeling exhausted, you've walked back from M&S, you've got your heavy bag, you just want to go home, you just want to make your food, and you walk past a homeless person on the street who probably hasn't eaten that day, maybe doesn't know when their next meal will be, has no roof over their head, and you have a choice in that moment of, do you just follow yourself and continue to walk home, or do you actually fight through the exhaustion and help that homeless person by, I don't know, walking into the nearest food shop and grabbing them a sandwich, which takes about 2 minutes to do. But in the moment, I completely understand, because I've been in this situation many times where I've really been wrestling with this of, I'm so tired, but I want to help. And let me tell you right now, if you genuinely sacrifice the way that you're feeling, which is temporary because you're going to go back home and have your food, and you actually stop and you help another person, the graces God gives you are insane. I've had times where I've done that and I've helped somebody else and my hunger is gone. I no longer feel hungry because I feel fulfilled, because fulfillment doesn't come from a satisfying meal. Fulfillment comes from God, and only God can bring us His graces. And I think this is my whole point of this video. How to regulate your emotions is actually by looking outside of yourself. But there is another side to it, which I completely understand, and that is, say for example, you're in work and something happens, something stressful happens, something that makes you feel nervous or anxious, or you've heard some news that's quite sad, and it can be very, very hard to know how to react in those situations. This brings me on to my second point. So first point is all actually about sacrificing yourself, decentralizing yourself, and that goes back to the two most important commandments, which is loving God and loving your neighbor. The second point that I'm going to make in this video is all about this idea of pinning the emotion, and this is what the main part of this video I want to be about. And the idea of pinning an emotion, I never used the phrase pinning before. I don't know what I used to use, but I find that using the phrase pinning the emotion helps you to understand it a lot more. But if you think of, like, I know that when I was a child, my mum had this like board in the kitchen where we would pin different, I don't know if it was like a silly picture, silly painting me and my brother drew, or like a calendar, important things for school, like all of these things, you kind of just pin it and you have it there front and center, so every single time you pass you will see these things that you've pinned. But it means that perhaps you're not tackling it right now, you're just pinning it on the board, you know it's there, you know it's important, but you'll get back to it. And this is the idea that I want to share in this video. It's all about, if you experience an emotion where it's not appropriate time to react, it's about pinning said emotion and addressing it. It's not about sweeping it under the carpet. We're not using the phrase sweeping under the carpet, because we know what happens then. You're going to sweep all these things under the carpet and they don't go away. It's not going to just magically disappear. In fact, it's going to come out at a time where you least expect it. You're going to have no control over your reaction, and you're going to have a lot of different emotions that are unaddressed, which is not healthy for yourself, but also it's not healthy for anybody around you. So the idea of pinning is a healthy way of coping with your emotions, where you acknowledge the emotion, you pin the emotion, and then you address the emotion when it's appropriate. So I also do want to mention that with this idea of pinning the emotion, I am talking about just your normal day-to-day emotions that you feel. I'm not talking about depression or grief or anything that's really tough emotions. I am not qualified to speak on those emotions. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about your day-to-day fears, day-to-day worries, or little moments of sadness that you might feel throughout the day, or if somebody makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, whatever those small things might be. That is the purpose of this video. So I think that's very important to say. So I noticed that with God through prayer, I started to naturally do this because I was praying for better ways to cope with my emotions. And this was a technique that I naturally just learned with God. Like, he put this on my heart to start implementing this. And this is not an overnight thing. It takes a while to get into the habit, because it actually does become a habit, and a good habit. So whenever I experience emotions now in the day, if something is triggering or something makes you feel uncomfortable, whatever it might be, say for example I'm in a work environment, it's not an appropriate environment to allow yourself to feel these negative emotions. You've got a job to do, you've got people to help, lots of different reasons why. So I started to pin it in my mind and pin it in my heart, and then when I'm home, I will address the emotion. And it sounds so simple, but then when you try and do that, I understand it can be hard, and it was definitely hard for me at times. But as I said, practice really does make perfect, because when you continuously do this, you're actually signaling to your body that your body can relax, because you're not sweeping under the mat, you're pinning it. It's still there, you're still going to address it. And every single time you get home and you're in a safe space and you can actually allow yourself to address the emotion, the way that I do this, when I say address the emotion, I'm talking about I actually allow myself to feel the emotion. And I think it's really, really important to actually allow yourself to feel. We're so scared of feeling things that perhaps are a bit more intense, but when you're in a safe and secure environment, it's really releasing to allow yourself to feel. It helps you to understand situations, to grow, to learn the lessons, but most importantly, in that moment, just allowing yourself to be present and feeling the emotion, no matter what it might be, I think is a really important step to overcoming that. Over time, the more that you do this, the more that your body knows that you will address it. So you actually feel safe and comfortable within your own skin. And you know that when something happens to you that causes you to feel a negative emotion, then you know, your body knows, your mind knows, and your spirit knows that you will address this later on. And I think the biggest way that you can really address this is to have a consistent prayer routine, where it's not just a routine in the sense of I'm just going to say this because I have to. Don't get me wrong, if you have no motivation at all, it doesn't really matter if you feel the prayer fully. Praying, regardless of how you feel, is incredibly important, but to have a consistent prayer schedule where you pray however many times it might be for you, and to have that moment of surrender, that time with God, which brings me back to why I always make sure to fit in within my week time where I can spend in solitude, because I'm not just spending that in solitude by myself, I'm spending that with God, with my Creator, who is the most important person in my life. So I think that that is the most important thing. And over time, the more you do this, the more, as I said, your body will genuinely feel comfortable, because you know you're going to address it. There's no need to be in this fight or flight, because it's not being swept under the carpet. You're not carrying heavy burdens of emotions you've not dealt with. And I think this is the whole point of God. It's that He knows we are not strong enough to carry this ourselves, but He wants us to call out to Him and to ask Him for help to help us. That to me is, in the most simplistic form, what God is calling us to do. It is to love. And what is love as well? Love is sacrifice. So if we circle this back to my first point of not letting your emotions just rule your life, to push past them. You don't have to do something skipping and bouncing and laughing when you don't feel like it, but doing the good thing and the right thing anyways, even when you feel drained, exhausted, upset. Looking at your neighbor and choosing to love them regardless of how you feel will make you feel 10 times better. Genuinely 10 times better. Try it. Genuinely try it. So those are my 2 points as to how I personally regulate my emotions. The first point is all about sacrifice. The second point is all about managing but giving yourself a safe space. in order to allow yourself to feel, because that is okay. It's okay to feel, it's okay to feel negative emotions. Nobody's perfect. And if we didn't feel the negative emotions, well, then we wouldn't even understand what good emotions and happiness means. Happiness wouldn't exist. We wouldn't even understand what good emotions were and good feelings were if we didn't have the negative emotions and the negative feelings. So there's a duality to everything, really. Yeah, that is what I wanted to share. I hope that this helped somebody out there. I just think that there's so many things online, and sometimes they're so complicated, and this is what has worked for me, and it's really helped me, and I am able to really manage my emotions. And no, I'm not perfect, so I can't always perfectly manage my emotions. My mum knows this very well. But I absolutely try my hardest, and that's all that God is asking of you. Please just try your hardest and just love others, you know? And we can do that in the way that we react and the way that we choose not to react. And that is everything that I want to share in this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Goodbye and God bless.